you struggle with learning, memorizing, or understanding chord progressions, then you are definitely going to want to watch this video. One of the hardest parts for people who are early on in their improv journey is understanding the hieroglyphics that are chord changes. At first, they seem super random and really complex, but once you start digging into them and seeing how they're all related, all of the puzzle pieces come together and it becomes a whole lot easier to figure out how these chords are working together. So let's start with the biggest mistake that new improvisers make when they're reading chord changes, and that is that they look at each chord as an individual chord and not how the chords are working together and how they're related. It's super important to understand that chords are never random. They are never random. They are always working together. And the way they work together are in tonal centers. Tonal centers are very, very important for understanding and memorizing chord changes. Now you might be asking or thinking, what is a tonal center? The tonal center is the main chord or key that all of the other chords are working around or supporting. We call that the one chord or the tonic. Now, if you're playing a pop song or a song with an easier chord progression, you might only have one tonal center. However, if you're playing a jazz song or a jazz standard, there is a good chance that you're going to have a couple different tonal centers and they're going to be transitioning from one to the next, and each tonal center will have its own supporting chords. Now that might sound a little confusing, so let's break it down with the chord progression for the first 8 measures of All the Things You Are, and that will cover a lot of ground about how to analyze chords, how tonal centers work, and how chords are all working together. So here is the first 4 measures for All the Things You Are. The first thing we need to do is find the tonal center. Now, if you look at the melody for All the Things You Are, you can see that it has a B flat in the key signature, and the first note is an F. So that gives us a really good starting point to think that this tune might be an F. And if we look at the first 4 measures, we can see that we have an F major 7 chord. Major 7 chords are a huge clue to help you figure out what your tonal center is. Now, if you have a major 7 chord, that doesn't always mean that it's going to be the tonal center. But when you have one, you want to look at the chords that are surrounding it and see if they are supporting the F major 7. So if you look at these first 4 measures, you can see that in measure 4, we have an F major 7. So let's look at the chord right to the left of that. If we look to the left, we can see that we have a C dominant 7th chord. Now let's figure out how the C7 chord is related to the F major 7 chord just by counting up the F major scale. So we have F, G, A, B flat, C. So that means the C is a 5 chord. 5 to 1 is a really strong chord movement, which is going home, going back to the tonic, going back to the 1. So when you have a 5 chord going to a 1 chord, you can almost guarantee that that 1 chord is acting as the tonic, as the root, as the main chord for that tonal center. Now let's keep investigating and look to the chord to the left of the C7, and that would be the G minor 7. So if we see how that is related to F, we would go F, G. So that is a 2 and it's minor, which makes perfect sense because we have a very, very predominant chord progression in the jazz language that is the 2-5-1, which is a minor 2, a dominant 7th 5, and a major 7 1. And that's exactly what this is a 2-5-1. So that is telling us that the F major is definitely 100% the tonal center for the beginning of All the Things You Are. Now let's look at the first chord in the tune. That is a D minor 7. Again, we're going to see how it's related to the F major 7. So that would be F, G, A, B flat, C. I'm running out of fingers, D. So that is the 6th chord. Now that makes perfect sense too, because the first extension of a 2-5-1 is a 6-2-5-1, and that's exactly how this progression starts, which is a very, very, very common chord progression in the jazz language. So when you look at these first 4 chords in All the Things You Are, instead of thinking about them by letter names, which would be D minor 7, G minor 7, C7, F major 7, think of it as a 6-2-5-1 in F major. That will make your life so much easier, especially if you want to transpose it into a different key, or when you start analyzing other songs, there is a 100% guarantee that you're going to run into a ton of 6-2-5-1s. So instead of trying to memorize the 4 chords. You just want to think about it as a 6-2-5-1 chord progression in the key of F. Now, when we know it's a 6-2-5-1, that also solves some other problems for us. So when we have a D minor 7, that could be a D Dorian minor or a D natural minor. If it's acting as a 6, we know that it's the natural minor because the natural minor is the same as the Aeolian mode, which is the 6th mode of the major scale. If we look at the G minor 7, same thing. We could think, is it Dorian minor or is it natural minor? If it's acting as a 2, we know that it's the Dorian mode, so it is going to have a flat 3rd and a flat 7th and a natural or major 6th. So when you analyze these progressions and you figure out what the tonal center is and how the chords are supporting it, it makes it so much easier to solo over, and it also makes it way easier to remember. Now here's the thing about these first 4 chords. They all have the same key signature because they are all just modes of the F major scale. So all 4 of these chords have a key signature of B flat. Now when you're soloing, you could technically just play a F major scale over all 4 chords and you would not play any wrong notes. It wouldn't sound that great because you would just kind of be meandering over top of all of the chord changes, but the notes in the F major scale would fit over all of those chords. This is what it would sound like if I just played these 4 chords with an F major scale. When I play like that, it doesn't sound terrible, but you don't hear anything except me meandering my way through an F major scale. So we want to hear the chord changes when we're playing over a chord progression. So the way to do that is to bring out the chord tones for each chord. So for the D minor 7, we'd bring out the D, F, A, C. For the G minor 7, we'd bring out the G, B flat, D, F. For the C7, we'd bring out the C, E, G, B flat. And of course, for the F major 7, we'd bring out the F, A, C, E. Now, even though all 4 of these scales have the exact same notes in them, we want to make the chord tones the important notes when we're playing over each chord. And when we do that, you're going to hear the chord progression in your improv solo. In that example, I just played notes that were in the F major scale, but I brought out the chord tones. So when I brought out the chord tones, even though all of the scales have the same notes, then you can hear the chord progression. And that is the whole idea when you're improvising over a set of chord changes for a jazz standard. If you'd like to get a whole lot better at improvisation and understanding the theory behind chord progressions and how to play over them, then I'd like to invite you to come check out my sax school. In the Scott Paddock Sax School, I have courses dedicated to improvisation that start you off at the very beginning with 1-note solos and take you through playing over complex chord progressions. So if you're ready to take your improvisation to the next level with some step-by-step lessons that are super easy to follow, then check out the Scott Paddock Sax School. I'll put a link in the video description below. All right, let's look at the next 4 measures of all the things you are and do some more investigating. So after the F major 7 chord, we have a B flat major 7 chord. Now, earlier in this video, I said when you have a major 7 chord, there's a very good chance that it is the tonal center. However, we just had a tonal center 1 chord before, so chances are this B flat is not acting as a tonal center, but it is related to the F major tonal center. So let's relate that B flat to the F and see what number note it is in the scale. F, G, A, B flat. So we know that that is a 4 chord. If this B flat major 7 is a 4 chord, that means it's based off of the 4th mode, which is the Lydian mode. The Lydian mode is a major scale with a raised 4th. So in the case of B flat, we would take that E flat that's in it and raise it up to an E natural. Now this is really important. Even though we are using the Lydian mode and raising the 4th degree, that doesn't necessarily mean that we would put that in the chord symbol, because the chord symbol is also telling the piano players and the bass player what to play, and they might not necessarily want you to play a sharp 4 in the chord because that gives it a different sound. However, as improvisers, when we look at that 4, we know that we are still in the key of the 1, in this case F major, so we're going to make that change and use the Lydian mode. So when you have a major 7 chord, chances are that it's going to be the tonal center. If it's not the tonal center, then check and see if it is the 4 chord. Now here's the thing about the 4 chord. In a lot of jazz standards, that is your transition chord from one tonal center to the next. So if we're going to transition into another tonal center, let's look at these next three measures and see if anything pops out at us, which would be the A major 7. So we have that A major 7, so let's look at the two chords next to it. We have a B minor 7 and E7. So if we relate those chords to the A major 7, we would have the A, B, which is the 2, the A, B, C sharp, D, E, which is the 5, and then the A, of course, which is the 1, which means that that is a 2-5-1 in the key of A. Now, there is a really easy way to identify 2-5-1s. Whenever you see three chords that are next to each other and they go minor 7, dominant 7th, major 7th, there's a really good chance that that is a 2-5-1. So when you see minor 7th, dominant 7th, major 7th, immediately check and see if it is a 2-5-1. Now the good news is the more you analyze these chord progressions, the easier it is to see them and pick them out right away. You're going to see these patterns repeating over and over and over. And once you understand the pattern, you're going to be able to pick up on it right away. So instead of looking at this progression as being D minor 7, G minor 7, C7, F major 7, B flat major 7, B minor 7, E7, A major 7, you want to think of it as a 6-2-5-1 in F major with the transition chord of the 4 going to a 2-5-1 in A major. When you think of it like that, it becomes way easier to memorize the chords, to work your way through the chords, and to understand what's going on in the music. So here is a little bonus tip. A great way to practice chord progressions and memorizing chord progressions and learning them and getting them under your fingers is to do what I call chord outline solos. That means you're going to play a solo, an improvised solo, but you're only going to use chord tones. When you do that, you're going to hear the chords moving from one to the next, and it's going to get the sound of the chord progression in your ears. If you enjoy my YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and click that button for notifications. Also, leave me a comment. Let me know what tune you're working on or what other topics you'd like me to do videos about. Comments are a game changer in the YouTube world. The more comments you get, the more YouTube sends your video out to more people. So leave me a comment below.